Steve confidently declared. I built this house, so it's mine. You need to leave, even though we're separating. I doubt you can manage on your part-time wages. He chuckled while handing her the divorce papers. My name is Katie, I'm 33, and I've just started working part-time at a local supermarket. 3 years ago, I married Steve after meeting him at work, and we both quit around the same time. I had wanted to keep working, but Steve insisted I stay home, so I became a full-time housewife. Even though I missed having a job, over time, the desire to work outside the home grew stronger, and after many conversations, I finally got a part-time position. We've been trying for kids, but it hasn't happened yet. I've always wanted a cat, but Steve hates them, so I had to give up on that dream. Even after allowing me to work part-time, he started complaining about everything. You went to work again today, huh? The house is getting messy, eh? And the laundry's wrinkled. You're not keeping up with the chores, he criticized. None of that was true. I always cleaned before leaving for work, and the laundry was done perfectly. What are you talking about? I've done everything as usual. It's clearly clean, I responded, frustrated, but then he turned to the meals. Fried chicken again? Can't you make something different? He grumbled. I didn't even make fried chicken that often. I tried my best to cook a variety of meals, despite my limited time. I made your favorite fried chicken and plenty of other dishes, I explained, but every time I spoke up, his anger only grew. You think your part-time job is so important? You barely make anything, he scolded. You're only working because you're selfish. My salary was fine for both of us. Don't make excuses about being busy. Focus on the house and do your job properly. Steve constantly belittled my job and made me feel worthless. He had once wanted me to stay home to avoid giving the impression that we were struggling, but now he looked down on me for working every day. His hurtful comments stung, and I grew more and more furious. One day, we decided to visit Steve's mother, whom we hadn't seen in a while. Although I was angry with him, I welcomed the change of scenery. After a long drive, we arrived, and his mother greeted us warmly. After dinner, Steve left to play slot machines, and while doing the dishes with my mother-in-law, her demeanor shifted. Her face grew serious as we sat down with coffee. Katie, Steve tells me you're working part-time. Why do you need a job when he's doing well? And he says you're neglecting the housework, she began. I was stunned by her words. That's not true. I'm managing everything just fine, I replied. She raised her eyebrows. I've heard from Steve how bad things are at home. He's exhausted from work, and it's upsetting that he comes home to a messy house. You're not cooking properly either, are you? Quit that part-time job. They can easily replace you. Your priority is to support Steve. My mother-in-law believed a wife's place was in the home, a view shaped by her own life as a full-time housewife. Steve, raised in that environment, shared her views, but her words cut deep. Not only did she belittle my job, but she also didn't understand how much effort I was putting in at home and work. I enjoyed my job, and my coworkers were supportive. The atmosphere was positive, and I felt valued there. Hearing myself spoken about as if I was incompetent was devastating, especially knowing Steve had been badmouthing me to his mother. Despite my efforts to maintain the home, he acted as if I wasn't pulling my weight. I was shocked and hurt by their gossip. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. For a few days, I felt completely down. Then I remembered my dad. Since my mom passed, he'd been living alone, and we hadn't spoken in a while. Needing comfort, I decided to give him a call. Normally, he answered quickly, but this time the phone rang longer than usual. Just as I began to worry, he finally picked up. Katie, it's been a while, how are you? Hearing his familiar voice, relief washed over me, and tears welled up in my eyes. Dad, it took you so long to answer. Are you okay? Should I call back later? I asked, my concern growing. No, I'm sorry about that. I recently fell down the stairs and hurt my back. I've been having trouble moving around, but don't worry, I'll be fine, he reassured me. I'll be fine soon. By the way, what's happening? Is everything all right? He asked, sounding concerned. I was taken aback. My dad, once so full of energy, had fallen down the stairs and injured his back. No, I'm okay, just focus on getting better yourself. I'll come visit soon, so please wait for me, I reassured him. Yeah, I'm okay, he replied, but I couldn't shake the worry. He was getting older, and injuries take longer to heal. I had always found comfort in his vitality, but suddenly, I felt anxious. The stairs in our old home were steep, and I feared he might fall again. Plus, the entrance and bathroom had high steps that weren't easy to manage. I began to worry about his safety and well-being in that house. What if something worse happened? I couldn't just ignore it. I had always thought living closer to him would be nice, but now I realized it was urgent. I decided I needed to build a safer, more accessible home for my dad nearby. I had some savings from managing the apartments my grandfather left me. The money was initially meant for my dad, but he put it in my name, just in case, and asked me to keep it from my husband. I had saved all the rental income up to this point. Now, I wanted to use that money to build a new house for my dad. The thought of giving him such a gift made me happy, especially since I hadn't been able to do much for him before. Building the house would be expensive, and I couldn't keep it a secret. I needed to discuss it with Steve. I was nervous about how he might react, but to my surprise, he said, "I understand. It makes sense to get him a new house, considering his age. If you think you can handle it, go ahead, just don't expect me to help if things get difficult." His dismissive tone annoyed me, but arguing would only escalate things, so I decided to let it go. It made things easier for me, at least. I quickly started searching for contractors and moved forward with the house plans. Yet, I couldn't help but notice that Steve seemed unhappy with the idea of me actually going through with it. He didn't say anything, so I tried not to dwell on it, but he wasn't one to stay quiet about things for long. One day, I was shocked when I went to the bank and noticed $3,000 missing from our joint account. It had been withdrawn all at once. I couldn't remember spending such a large amount, and there was only one person who could have done this. As much as I didn't want to believe it, it was clear that Steve had taken the money. That night, I confronted him. I saw that $3,000 was withdrawn from our account. "Do you know anything about that?" I asked. He responded arrogantly, "I gave it to my mother." "You're building a house, right? So you must have some savings somewhere. $3,000 isn't a big deal." I was stunned. "Why would you give her that much? Your mother isn't struggling, and that was our household money. You didn't even talk to me about it first." He snapped, "What do you know about my mother? She needed help, and what's wrong with a son helping his mother? That money was earned by me, so it's none of your business how I use it. If it bothers you, maybe you should try earning as much as I do with your part-time job." "Can't say anything now, can you? Don't ever question me again." With that, he stormed out of the room. I had always trusted Steve, despite his harsh words. I wished he had just talked to me. Maybe we could have figured out a way to help his mother without all this drama. Did he think I wouldn't agree to help her, or did he simply not trust me? Instead of bringing us closer, our marriage seemed to be pushing us further apart. Steve didn't see anything wrong with taking the money. The next day, he acted like nothing had happened and left for work. I didn't bring it up again to avoid another argument, but I couldn't shake the unease. Meanwhile, the house for my dad was completed. Despite all the stress, the contractors had done a great job, and it turned out beautifully. I told my dad to start packing, but I hired movers to help so he wouldn't have to strain himself. With 2 weeks left until the move, I was filled with joy thinking about what I had accomplished for him. On the day we planned to move my dad in, I tried discussing the final details with Steve, but then he dropped a bombshell. "That house isn't for your dad, it's going to be for my mother. I have the right to decide who lives there since I helped build it. It's going to be hers," he said bluntly. I was in disbelief. "I built that house. It's for my dad. There's no way you could have afforded to build it on your part-time income. It's my money that built that house, so don't act entitled," he said. It seemed like he genuinely believed it was his money. When we discussed building the house before, he had been supportive, but now it was clear he intended all along for it to be for his mother. It was beyond unfair. Now, I had to prove that I had used my own money. I had no choice but to reveal the rental income one had been keeping secret. I decided to tell him everything. "You're lying just because you want the house. If you're going to make up stories, at least try to make them believable," he scoffed. He didn't believe me at all and stormed off. I was at a loss, but I had to make him understand. When he returned later, he was furious. "You lied to me about the house. It's mine, and you need to leave. Even if we split up, you'll never survive on your part-time salary," he said coldly. I was speechless. The house I had worked so hard to build for my dad was being ripped away from me. "Sign these and get out tonight," he said with a smirk, tossing divorce papers onto the table. His part was already signed. After constantly belittling me, handing me divorce papers felt like the ultimate betrayal. Maybe he thought this would break me, but little did he know. I had enough savings to support myself without relying on him anymore. This was the last straw for me. I signed the divorce papers, filed them, and swiftly packed my belongings before heading to my father's house. He was surprised to see me arrive with so much baggage, but he welcomed me with open arms. After I explained the entire situation, he patted my shoulder and said, "You've been through a lot. Stay with me in the new house, it would mean the world to me." Moving day arrived, and everything went off without a hitch, since I was there to help. The process was seamless. It was odd that my ex-husband hadn't reached out after making such a scene about the house being his, but I decided not to dwell on it. I didn't want to waste time thinking about someone I was no longer tied to. A few days after my father and I settled into our new home, something unexpected happened. There was a disturbance outside, and when I looked, I saw a large moving truck parked in front of our house. The movers claimed they were here to move in. Confused, I rushed outside to get to the bottom of it. To my shock, the person who hired the movers was none other than my ex-husband. He planned to move into the house with his mother, attempting to forcefully take over the place where my father and I were already living. We were divorced, he had no right to be here, and the thought of his bold attempt filled me with fear. I calmly explained the situation to the bewildered movers, asking them to stop. Then, I informed my father and quickly called the police. After explaining the details to the authorities, they confirmed that the house was mine, and since my ex-husband had no legal claim, trying to move in without my permission was trespassing. When my ex-husband and his mother showed up and saw the police, they panicked. It finally hit him that I was the rightful owner of the house, but with his mother in hysterics and the police interrogating him, he lost his temper and shouted, "Why can't I live in this house? What's going on?" Watching him unravel, I realized I was done dealing with someone like him. To protect both my father and myself, I handed over the final piece of evidence to the police. While the situation was defused thanks to their involvement, I later learned that my ex-husband faced significant repercussions. In his determination to claim the house, he had cancelled his apartment lease and sold his mother's home, leaving them both homeless. Between the breach of contract fee from the movers and all their possessions stuck in the truck, he found himself stranded with his mother and no place to go. The key evidence I provided was footage of his verbal abuse, which was essentially domestic violence. Unable to tolerate his cruel words any longer, I had installed security cameras that captured everything. The recordings showed me quietly managing household chores while he hurled insults and abuse. Armed with this evidence, I hired a lawyer and sued him, eventually securing a settlement. The costs from his failed moving attempt, along with the settlement, drained the money he received from selling his mother's house and wiped out his savings. Now, he and his mother are reportedly living in a dilapidated apartment. Word of his actions spread quickly at his job. His coworkers, realizing the kind of person he truly was, began distancing themselves, and now he's isolated and avoided at work. As for me, I finally adopted a cat. My father's back has healed completely, and we've been talking about taking a vacation. With the cat in tow, I used the settlement money to open a small shop selling cat products. Though it was tough in the beginning, and I faced setbacks, business gradually picked up, and it's now flourishing. My life has become peaceful and truly fulfilling. I never imagined that the steps I took for my father's well-being would lead to my own happiness, but now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Recently, something wonderful happened. A kind man who often visits my shop, always friendly with both people and cats, asked me to go on a drive with him. I'm living my life with freedom and joy, and I'm excited about the new happiness that's unfolding in my future. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.